Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Take a moment to get settled, get comfortable. Take a look at the tips on the screen. Today's fairly low tech, so this is all fairly self-explanatory, but a couple of tricks and tips with Zoom. And we'll get started momentarily. Hopefully you have a drink that you're enjoying, a cold beverage. It is so hot. There, I was gonna say, Peter, me too. Me too. Ice water is what I've got going on. And a fan at my feet, which you can't see. You can't. Yeah, we'll get started. So I'm Claire Graves. I'm the Director of Marketing at Atlantic. For those of you who've joined us many times for this series, thanks for coming back. For those of you whose first time it is, thank you for joining us today. We're so excited that you've all spent some time with us on this Friday afternoon. This is going to be fairly self-explanatory. We're going to have a conversation that's going to last about 45 minutes that Neil will moderate. And then in the last 15 minutes, we'll take any questions that you guys have. So if you do have questions along the way, there's a little Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Feel free to click on that and you can enter a question really at any time. So if anything strikes your fancy in the moment, enter a question in, and then we will collect them and go through a few at the very end. And this relies on the internet, which of course, you know, there's only so much we can do to control the internet. So if for any reason you're having technical difficulties, you can also use the Q&A button to let us know. And those of us who are managing the back end of the session will try to help you sort things out. And if anything goes wrong on our end, which it shouldn't, but if it does, then we will try to take care of it very quickly and efficiently and have all of you out by 5 p.m. Eastern time. And that is all. Neil, I'll let you take it from here.
Great. Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Pepe. I'm the Artistic Director of the Atlantic, and I'm thrilled to have you all here today. Before we jump in, I wanted to say a couple of things. This is our first iteration of Inside the Ensemble, and we're going to do a couple more of these later in the summer with other ensemble members as well. But this is the first one, so we're really excited to be doing it. Before I jump in, I also wanted to say we're doing everything we can to prepare ourselves for when we get back to live theater, which, as you all know, is an ever-shifting goalpost. We don't know if it will be January or March, or we'll see, but we're doing everything we can to survive and to prepare for that great time when we can all be back in the theater again. In the meantime, if you like this free programming that we've been doing every Friday and you feel inclined to make any kind of donation, we would gladly accept it to keep our theater alive and healthy. So thanks again for being with us. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to have these two extraordinary artists, Beth Peil and Peter Maloney. I've known and worked with both of them for many, many years. And they're both extraordinary and have amazing histories. We're going to talk about a lot today. So I just wanted to say welcome to both of you. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for the invite.
And you both look amazingly literary with your bookcases behind you. It's great. We're gonna be trying to figure out what you've read back there. I guess the thing I wanted to start with is, it is called Inside the Ensemble. So let's start a little bit with, both of you have been with the company, with the Atlantic Company, for quite a while, and you want to talk a little bit about your history with the company, and then. And maybe even, because Peter, when we had spoken before, you were talking a little bit about community too, but I'd love to hear just your description of your history with the company, or whatever you want to say about your experience with the years that you've worked with the Atlantic, and how you got into it, and how we were lucky enough to cajole you into becoming members of the Atlantic.
Who told who?
That's right. I don't know. It was it was a good date. The date went very well. Yeah. But either of you, yeah, talk about how your history with the company, or anything you want about the company.
Beth, you want to go first?
I'll go first. I had just sort of broken the not the glass ceiling, but the sound barrier, I guess, of people in New York where I lived in the theater community, letting me do straight plays, having come from a world of opera for many, many years, another life, and then world of music theater. It was very hard for me to even get auditions for straight plays. And just by the gods being in the right time in the right place, I was asked by Michael Mayer and Craig Lucas and you to come and sort of read through Craig's, I don't know if it was the latest play, but one of his plays called Missing Persons. And we went up into it was like a walk up on Broadway and 20th Street. It was really like crack heaven, you know, the stairwell.
That might have been was that our 16th Street space, the old MTC?
No, it wasn't 16th Street.
Oh, I know what you're talking. It was actually a porn house. It was a porn
house. It was.
We had taken over, yeah.
And,
yeah.
I had just moved onto 20th Street. I had just moved into that block between 8th and 9th Avenue. And all of a sudden I get this call, can I come quick, like an hour later, around the corner and walk up these creaky stairs with crack vials on and everything, and go into this room and read a few scenes from this play and meet Michael and Craig. And the next thing I knew, I was doing this wonderful play, playing this amazing woman in a stage set that looks like Peter's room, just blocks of bookshelves and books, and this
David Gallo's set.
Yes, David Gallo's set. I still dream about that set and think, oh God, what happened to all that wood? Where is it? It was just a love affair with the play, with the company. The whole thing was extraordinary to me. I felt right at home. The dressing room, being sitting between Mary and Cameron Manheim and everybody just I had the feeling that I was recognized or accepted as a legitimate actress in a straight play in New York City for the first time, and it was extraordinary. And then when Mary said, we'd like for you to become a member of the company, I thought she was crazy. I thought she made a mistake, because I've never read, I don't think I'd ever even seen a David Mamet play, let alone read one or read his books or anything. And I said, I don't think I can, because I don't know anything about what you do here. She said, yes, you do. You just did a play with us. She said, we need fresh blood. So that was my beginning, and it's been fabulous ever since, every minute. Whether it's being in a play or coming to a play, it's just a lovely family and a lovely community. And the fact that when the theater was renovated, that you didn't fool around with that dressing room. You didn't make little individual dressing rooms. I don't know how many of the audience is aware of the dressing room is just a big empty, when no one's in it, space that can adapt itself for a 2-person play or a 15-person play, depending on how the curtains are arranged. So we're all in it together as a family, from day one to rehearsal. Yeah,
it's very communal. And Peter can tell you later about it. Sometimes it's too communal.
Oh yes,
I have videos.
Yeah, one thing I'll say, Mary Beth, that was such an amazing production, Missing Persons. It was also because Mary McCann was in it, Todd Weeks, Jordan Leish, all these company members.
Yes.
And John Cameron Mitchell was also in it at the same time that he was developing Hedwig.
That's right.
Missing Persons, and he was going down to like those little Fez or something and developing Hedwig. So there was lots of things going on. Well, that's awesome. Peter, how did we get to you? How the hell did you end up in this company anyways?
I don't quite remember how you first got me.
Our town?
The first plays that I was in at the Atlantic were in the 16th Street space, which was, I think, the second floor of a kind of It looked like it could be a auto supply,
Oh, no, yes, you're talking
repair
about
supply
we had
store.
the second stage on the old MTC space. I know what
Yeah.
They sell
Yeah.
tires downstairs, and we did plays upstairs, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we
And there
first
were
met you,
classrooms there too. You were doing the school there as well
that's right.
Yeah.
at that time.
We first met you at Our Town, right? That was the first time we met you.
Oh, that's right. In Our Town, we did Our Town at Lincoln Center, which was a absolutely wonderful experience, directed by Gregory Mosher, who was one of the original members of the Atlantic Theater Company.
Yep.
You know, I mean, Mamet really shook up this town, New York, when he came here, and I saw all of his productions at I saw things at St. Clement's Church. I think this is before, but certainly before the Atlantic was formed.
It was. That was the first production of American Buffalo.
And of course, Glenn Ross, I saw it 5 times at my own expense on Broadway. And it was absolutely thrilling to me. I felt it was a much greater play than American Buffalo, for example. And it just got me. I couldn't stop attending it, you know, and so thrilled by this writer. And I'm not sure if that was part of why I so enjoyed working at the theater, but you know, the theater was like so many, like other theaters that I was already a member of. It was in very limited circumstances. I mean, there was no money, or let's say much less money than there is today. And even today, we're struggling to stay alive with cash. But it was terrific. We did. I can't remember, frankly, the name of the play that we did. I think Mary was in one of them.
Yeah.
That I did on that second floor space. And then Tom Donaghy's play, Down the Shore.
That's right.
And The Dad Shuttle was a double bill. That was my first time in the church, I think.
And that was very early. That was the first or second season that I was artistic director. So it may have been 93 or 94.
There you go. And I played your father, didn't I?
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
And Catherine Irby was in it, and
Yeah.
Todd Weeks and William H. Macy directed it.
Yeah. And then I played with Matt McGrath in The Dad Shuttle.
Yeah.
So that was a great experience too, because Tommy is a wonderful writer. The actors were phenomenal. I mean, it was just a wonderful experience to be on that stage. Now, I've been a member, I'm still a member of a number of other theaters. And I'm attracted to a company. There I was a member of the New Dramatists. I don't think the Actors Studio, Ensemble Studio Theater, where I'd worked less often as an actor, but very often as a director and playwright. They produced all my plays. And when I was asked by Mary, the emissary, to become a member of the Atlantic Theater Company, I turned her down. Fact that Neil has never let me forget. And
that was very
really good reasons, because I was a member of all these other companies, and I was on the board of a couple of them, and I was on every committee that I think I was between marriages at the time, and I had a lot of free time. So when they said, will you be on this committee? Will you chair this? I said, of course. What else do I have to do? I'm between marriages. So I just didn't feel, I feel badly, and I feel guilty about the fact that I could say no to this organization, which means so much to me, the Atlantic Theater. I still feel guilty about it. But I felt at the time, I said, it's not fair to anybody for me to stretch myself, whatever my value, to stretch myself so thin. I can't.
Which is great, but we could we somehow kept casting you anyways, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I said no, and fortunately, nobody got insulted really, and we kept doing plays down there. And at one point, after some years passed, and I passed a certain number of productions, it might have been 13, I don't know. I was finally asked again to join the theater, and I snapped up the opportunity. I mean, it was meant to be. It just took me a long time to realize it.
Yeah, and by then you were happily married.
I'm sorry?
By then you were happily married.
By then, I think I was happily married again, yeah.
Yeah.
You settled in, you had your kids, and you said, okay, now I can.
I guess so. I don't know. I mean, anyway, it's a wonderful thing that happened to me when I was taken in by the Atlantic, I must say.
Yeah, well, it's been amazing. I mean, in your case, Peter, it was hilarious because there was a point where it felt like you had done, a lot more than 13. It felt like you'd done like 25 plays.
Well, 25 now, I think. I said that, yeah.
Yeah, we were like, why? Maybe you really should become a member since we seem to be able to work without you. Yeah, so it's been amazing having you guys as part of, and I want to, you both alluded to it a little bit, that you've been involved in lots of other things. I guess, Mary Beth, I wanted to talk a little bit about your history, because you have kind of an amazing, because you started off as an opera singer, is that correct?
I not only started out, I stayed in
Yeah.
for about 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you were singing opera, but didn't you also, and I can't remember at what point this happened, were you also on tour with The King and I, with Yul Brynner at some
Well,
point?
that was when I made my, I kept trying to leave the opera world, and it sort of kept pulling me back in, but I knew at a certain point, I knew that it wasn't really, that I was never going to be, I wasn't so interested in my voice as I was in the story, and the music. I love the music, but I never really fell in love with my voice, which I think you have to do as an opera singer. I mean, I think I was a good enough singer when I was young that people thought I was going to be something, but I couldn't fall in love with my voice. So it was during a period of time when I was trying to leave the opera world, and I was a civilian for a short amount of time, and I started taking an acting class, and to make a long story short, I had an audition for Yul Brynner, who was looking for a new Mrs. Anna to do a run in Los Angeles, and I thought, oh, what the hell, why not? I had just done my first musical, Kiss Me Kate, with Minnesota Opera, which was an opera company I'd always done opera with, but the opera companies were just figuring out how they could make some money by doing musicals, Sondheim and the classics, Rodgers and Hammerstein and stuff. So I had come back from doing this Kiss Me Kate in Minnesota, and I sort of started rethinking, well, maybe I don't have to leave the world of theater, of performing, just because I'm leaving the opera world. Maybe I can do musicals, which I'd never been allowed to do as an opera singer. So I had the audition for Yul Brynner, and I got it, and that changed my life.
And that sort of led you into a musical theater career at that point.
Led me into a music theater career, yeah. So when I started music theater career, I couldn't tell anybody that I'd been an opera singer, because I was very suspect in those days. Not so much so now, but very suspect in those days. And then after I sort of was established in music theater, I had to try to convince people that I could do straight plays, which is why the Atlantic was such an important moment for me in my life, to be taken seriously as an actor without singing the lines. Yeah, so and then I have a wonderful agent who has always believed in me, and good fortune, I then started getting film and TV work. So I feel like now it's like this cornucopia of things that I've been allowed to do, and hopefully, if anything ever comes back, continue to do.
Yeah, and Peter, want to talk about sort of your start, because it feels like you've done so many different things, but we were also talking about ensembles, but even before, because you were involved in some of the great ensembles of the late 60s and early 70s, right? But before we get into that, because I'm really interested in hearing you talk about that, when did you start off acting? And you moved to New York to become an actor. Talk about your start.
I arrived in New York in 1963, the same exact time as Sam Shepard arrived in New York, and lived on in the East Village.
Yeah.
The hippie was involved. That was the beginning of the off-Broadway movement. Cafe Chino, small theaters in churches.
Yeah.
And restaurants, tiny spaces, with the most exciting, poetic writing being done by young people, young writers. It was a time of real, I won't say revolt, but certainly there was a spirit inside the artist, which was to somehow break the mold that was, prevalent at the time.
Yeah.
And, I was a stage manager, which was fortunate because my expectations were denied when I got off the bus, and there were no banners welcoming me to the New York Theater, let alone the Broadway stage, where I thought after 4 years of incredible success at college as a comic actor, I thought I was destined to be, if not the next Zero Mostel, then at least the next Jack Guilford, who was one of my heroes and has been one of my heroes all my life as a comic actor. So fortunately, I had the stage managing experience, and so I alternated between stage managing and acting for 7 years. And then a playwright sat me down after I did his 4th play and told me, "You've got to stop stage managing. You say you want to be an actor. You will not be an actor as long as you continue to stage manage, because you'll keep working and you'll earn a living, and you'll get used to it." So I never stage managed after that. Then soon after that, I had some experiences which were crucial, working with great directors who sort of changed my life forever, and started to get me out of that college, that thing which had been so prized on the college stage, which was ultimately harmful to me as an artist to continue in that vein. I really had to learn how to become a real theater artist.
And do you mean the sort of techniques of the way in which you were acting in college versus
There were no techniques except my own. I mean, no, my own instincts for how to get a laugh. I mean, how to whatever I had to do to get a laugh, I would do it. I said on another recent podcast that I did, pandering is a kind word to describe the kind of thing that I did on the stage. I mean, really, if there was a laugh to be found or invented or created where there wasn't meant to be one, I would create it, So I was very popular, and I enjoyed it, and it was fun, but there was much more to it than I suspected. My teachers, I had a few good teachers at college, but a number of them were not so good and encouraged me in the wrong areas, So I had to change. That all had to change. Once I engaged these directors who just opened up a world to me by basically saying to me, "What are you doing? What are you doing up there? I don't understand it." I mean, why are you behaving in this way?
And who were those directors?
Well, the first two were Arthur Penn, who was perhaps the most important influence on me for many years.
And he was at the Actors Studio, right?
This is before the Actors Studio. I didn't become a member of the Actors Studio until years later. But I worked for him as an actor and stage manager, and then went to Texas with Warren Beatty and he to make the movie Bonnie and Clyde, which I was casting director and dialogue coach for 3 months on location in Texas. So that was a pretty great thing to do at age 24. And then to come back, and the night I got back, my then wife and I, Ellen, and I were unpacking, and we got a call from this man who's Jordan Charney, who's been responsible for many, many theater jobs that I've done. I called him and told him we were back, and he said, "What are you doing tonight?" And that night we went down and we met the members of the Open Theater in a workshop, and I joined this workshop, learning how to use our bodies and voices in ways that we had never heard of before. Doing a lot of viola spolin techniques, certain techniques which had been developed by this company called the Open Theater, which I didn't really know about. They had a big hit off Broadway called America Hurrah at that time. And this opened up another totally different world, which was sort of nonverbal and akin to, I have to say, akin to dance and movement, where movement was almost more important than what was being said, which was a good idea because when we did our first tour of Italy and Sicily, nobody understood what we were saying in English. So it was a good thing that we could convey what we were trying to convey through sound and movement. So
and the director, sorry, Peter, the director was Richard Schechner. Who was the director?
Joseph Chaikin.
Joseph Chaikin, yeah, great.
Yeah. So he was the next, well, George Tabori, who I worked with at the same time that I worked with Arthur Penn, summer of '66, very crucial influence on me. And then Joe Chaikin, starting in 1966. And I was with him for 4 years. I did almost nothing but this avant-garde work. I like to say that I didn't wear shoes on stage for 4 years. And sometimes I didn't wear anything on stage. And that was interesting, very interesting. Speaking of opera, Mary Beth, we did an opera by Luciano Berio called Opera. And we were in it. Our theater company was in it. He'd seen us in Italy and he wanted to make an opera partly based on our work. So there I was on the stage of the Santa Fe Opera Company taking all my clothes off. And it created a scene among the audience there. It was not since Stravinsky did Rite of Spring in Paris has there been such an outrage. People screaming, call the police. Ladies leaving with their escorts, running up the aisle to get away from me. What did they think I was going to do? Come down off the stage? And so it was, that was all very exciting. And that ended for me in 1970. That was a real company. I mean, we traveled together. We flew on airplanes together, took ocean liners together, and had 2 European tours. It was fantastic. But of course, again, for no money. I have to get back to the years of the 60s, the mid 60s. For those of us who wanted to do this kind of work, there was no money. You know, I mean, we had to pay $3 each to rent the loft that we worked in. And when we came back from Europe the first time, we were kind of famous. And suddenly New York critics took us seriously and started giving us good write-ups. And we started getting some more money coming in. You know, we didn't have to pay the $3 anymore. That was kind of nice.
Yeah.
Go
ahead. Yeah.
Well, that was a different kind of acting. Of course, it was really different. I mean, the method, there was a lot of dissatisfaction on Chaikin's part, and I guess on the original members of the company, starting in 1963. They wanted to do different things that actors were not used to doing. So the training had to be different. And when I finished that work, I went right to Uta Hagen. And I was with Uta for 4 years. And Uta is she's a Stanislavskian. I mean, she's an inheritor of that tradition with her own adjustments and her own beliefs and ideas about how best to be an actor. And she was an invaluable teacher for me in terms of not so much the invention of the actor, but how to maintain the performance. In other words, how to do the play 8 times a week. And the director can have confidence in you that you will, and the writer, that you will be there doing what is expected.
Yeah, and you know, off of that, Peter, because I want to, what's so interesting hearing both of you talk, because your journeys in terms of how you came in and the kind of work you were doing and how you got to where you got to is so different, but amazing. But you're talking about process now, which is, and I guess one of the questions I had, because we may have some actors or young actors or people who are interested in that, is talking about, you know, which Peter, you're already getting into, things you've learned about process over the years. And I think Mary Beth, you also started to talk about it too, of things that you had learned as an opera singer that you either needed to get rid of, but you want to talk about how your processes have evolved over the years, and maybe there's even within there any advice. But Mary Beth, for you, you talked about adjustments that you were making as you went along. Was there a big switch for you all of a sudden when you went, oh, I'm not doing musicals anywhere, but you weren't necessarily throwing, because you're still an amazing musical theater actor, and I'm assuming you're holding on to some of the stuff you learned as an opera.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean,
So,
I think that the main thing, that the takeaway for me as an opera singer that carried through music theater and definitely carries through now into film and TV is the discipline. The discipline of doing your daily workout, of keeping yourself physically in shape, vocally in shape, mentally in shape. That daily, I want to say grind, but that's not the right word for it. But it is a discipline that, especially the older I've gotten, the more I realize to even do a little bit every day is better than not doing anything. And I find that both in just basic things like memorizing lines, a lot of my colleagues who are my age, Peter's age, the experienced actor, we start to have, it takes longer to memorize it. It takes more concentration, more tricks. And I find that part of my brain that went to work as a young opera singer, doing classical songs in German and French and Italian, and having to memorize so much material, both the words and the music, I think that muscle has stood me in good stead.
Yeah.
For as we go along. The other interesting thing that I have only in the last probably 15 years begun to assimilate is that on stage, when you're on stage doing a play, no matter what size the theater is, if it's Broadway or off Broadway or off Broadway, you want the person in the last row, however far away that is, to get what you're saying and what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. So there's we call it projection, but there's a certain amount of one, it's hard not to use the word performative. You have to give it.
Right.
It's and that's part of what allows you to do 8 shows a week, is that you're not totally experiencing it, the trauma, if it's a traumatic thing, every night, or you'd have to be carried away to the loony bin. But when I started doing film and television, when the camera, and like doing this now with the Zoom things and the online things, where it's just all close-ups,
Right.
with the need to just, as a TV director once said to me, when you're on stage, you have to do what you're thinking. When you're on camera, you just think what you're thinking. And it's not that one is, well, one could say one is more honest than the other, but there's something about carrying over the need for honesty on camera that I learned on the spot. I never learned it in a school or training. I learned it while I was doing it, that I found I started carrying over into my stage work, and it enriched my stage work tremendously.
Yeah.
Tremendous. It's very, very, like I used to think, well, you do, one is one technique and one is the other technique. And I don't feel that way anymore.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Peter, I was thinking, because of all the various sort of, as you're describing, techniques, the thing that's always struck me, that I've always loved about your acting is there's an economy to it. And there's something about people who have gone through something but have the ability to make simple, truthful, direct choices without over embellishing. And I guess off of what Mary Beth's saying, do you feel like as you sort of went through all these experiences as an actor, was it a process of shedding? I mean, maybe it's the thing you're saying too about coming off of college and feeling like you were learning more about the kind of acting that interested you. But did you feel like as you went along, what did become about economy and truth and things like that?
You know, the wonderful thing about the theater and the wonderful thing about acting, if you're serious about it and you choose it as an art that you want to pursue for your entire life, profession, is that you never stop learning you never stop learning about everything, but you also never stop learning about how to use yourself, unless you choose to stop learning, in which case you become ossified and it becomes kind of mechanical, which you don't, then makes you totally uninteresting finally. But so I've enjoyed the search through time of all the problems that my work and my art present to me. Now, my father was an actor, and he was an Irishman, and he was loud. And that was another time, but he was the first actor I ever knew, and I acted with him and I stage managed for him, and I loved him, and he was really a wonderful actor. But on the stage, he was very expressive, very expressive. And I think part of my problems that I have encountered as an actor come from the fact that I was raised by him. And it bothers me, you know. Film, I love the movie business. I just love it, and I love movies, and I've done maybe over 60 movies in small roles. I'm a character actor, so when I watch them, I'm very often dissatisfied and seldom pleased with what I've done, because it's got to do with, really, as Mary Beth said, it's got to do with being. You know, you don't have to do anything. You just have to be. You really have to be there, and the camera will pick that up. And if you do too much, and if you don't trust that, and you do things, then the camera will pick that up. And that's what is sort of unusable in a motion picture, because it's so intimate, it's so close to you. Just be there. Don't have to act, just be there.
But it's also interesting because both of you are two actors who, like Mary Beth was saying, have the capacity on stage that if something is bigger and needs to be delivered physically, you know how to do that in theater. So it's the adjusting back and forth. In other words, one of the things that's so exciting about working with both of you on many plays is your ability to understand what's amazing about live theater and sort of lean into that.
Here's a case in point. Here's a case in point. Mary Beth and I were in this play, which you directed, based on the Russian play, The Suicide. It was called Dying for It.
Dying for It, yeah.
A new version by that lady playwright. And I made some kind of a wild, crazy choice in a very early on our feet attempt to get through the play. He was like a Dostoevsky and madman. You know, I was a priest, you know, a Russian priest, and he was loud. He was very loud, and I said to myself, how long is Neil going to let me get away with this? And I don't know. I was so loud. I was developing nodes on my vocal cords. I was going to have an operation on my voice. I don't know.
I think we just all thought it was so funny. We said, let him just keep going.
Let him go.
But, you know, it wasn't my favorite thing to do once I chose it and did it. You know what I mean?
You worry about it. You're saying because of your dad and the loudness that you worry about that pure
Well, I
volume.
do worry about it, and I've had a director who we both know, who has had a real problem with me in that regard. It was a play that that did not call for a lot of expansiveness, and yet my instinct, the kind of person I am, sort of took over too much, I guess. And he said, Peter, it's too loud. It's too loud. You've got to come down. You've got to bring it down. It's too loud. He said this for an awfully long time. And it was hard for me. It was hard for me to do it because, I don't know. It was just, I ultimately, I think, succeeded with it. But that's the challenge. I love the challenge of it, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, these are sensitive questions in the sense that, for example, you and I have had disagreements, Neil, about emotion. About emotion.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
You know, I can go through a great role in a great play like Simon Stevens's play, and I mean, it really upset me to get notes from you about the emotion.
Well, yeah. What I think is great about this conversation, though, is, and it goes back to the thing I was saying about economy, because at the end of the day, there's something about the way, I mean, you both handle emotion in an amazing way, but there's something about the economy, Peter, about how you handle emotion. And obviously, maybe I was screwing that up as a director, but I so admire your ability to stay in the moment and stay simple without playing into the emotion that was exciting to me. But of course, I probably didn't direct you well in how I said.
No. I love working with you. I love working with you as a director. Absolutely. That's not the problem. But what it awakens in me, the kind of, well, that's what it's about, though, isn't it? It's about figuring out how I can be truthful to what I perceive in terms of the character's emotional life. And
yeah.
you can try to protect your vision of it, yeah. You know, and you don't want me to, look, we've all had experiences with actors where they are kind of wallowing in emotion and much too self-involved, as opposed to the guy that the writer has invented,
right,
and wants to have up on stage.
Yeah, and so the balance between that.
Not an uncommon problem.
Yeah.
And how does one deal with it? How do you deal with it? What is enough? What is too much? And of course, in the last analysis, if we are professionals, which we are, then our job is finally to serve the playwright.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the director's there to see that we do, and to realize his or her vision. I'm a strong director, and but the playwright comes first.
I find myself coming more and more back to the language, more and more. I used to think, no, it's about the character. It's about the backstory. It's about what you're feeling. It's about, and it is all of those things, but it has to start with the language, and it has to somehow still end with the language, because the audience is also has to hear it. They have to hear what you're saying. And
Yep.
I mean, as an actor and as a director, you put yourself often at the service of lesser writers, people who have lesser skills with the language. But boy, when you get to work with, mentioning Simon, with someone like Simon, or I just, the last thing I did on theater was Shakespeare. The language is such it's just the most important thing. And I feel like what we're doing now, we've been deprived of the stage. We've been deprived of the sound set. We've been deprived of the props and all of the things that we rely on as actors and directors. And now it's just back to the little screen in our little boxes.
Right.
And talking to each other and language. And I've seen a lot of really interesting, some less successful than others, readings of plays on the small screen like this. And it just keeps striking me how the language, how important it is, that it's a part of my experience, maybe because I didn't start out as an actor, so it was always the music. The music was the language in my early training, that I had a lesser appreciation of the language. I don't know, but I'm just bowled over by it.
Well, and what I would say to both of you, because it's so amazing hearing you talk about the process stuff, that I do feel like having worked with you both, the idea of giving yourself over to the material is you both do that beautifully. I mean, and that idea, which I think is such a key element to being a good actor, is serving that, like you said, serving the story, serving the language, and allowing the language, and bringing yourself truthfully to it, which is you both do so well.
Mary Beth and Peter, I was going to pop in with some audience questions.
Go for it.
That's all right. So the first one is for Mary Beth. What was the most difficult part about changing your process when you were creating a character, transitioning from opera, then to musical theater, to straight plays, and then to TV and film, and back and forth?
Okay, how to say that in 2 sentences? Let me see. I think for me, the most difficult part was, I mean, this probably sounds pretty silly, but it basically had to do with my speaking voice. I was trained to, my voice, I don't know, I can't do it anymore. I don't want to do it anymore, but I was trained to only sing. Whatever the emotion was, whatever the story was, whatever the character was, is just to sing. And I had to untrain my speaking voice. I had to untrain my singing voice as well to make it sound like a normal person. So I wasn't sounding like someone who had been trained as a singer, or someone who had been trained as a speaker even. I felt like I had to just basically unlearn everything that I had learned as a classical singer. Ironically now, in order to keep my voice still alive and as youthful as possible, I now go back to some of the vocalizing and the use of my breath that I learned as an opera singer, that I feel keeps me ahead of some of my colleagues who are my age, who never learned to use their voice in any way. So it's kind of ironic. I had to unlearn it to get to do all the things that I've done, but now that I'm of a certain age, I've gone back to some of those healthy ways of keeping my voice supple and alive. I don't know. That's
Great.
That's the.
Thank you. That's great. So for both of you, what are you reading right now, or listening to, or streaming, or watching? In other words, what are you finding comfort and inspiring at this crazy, strange moment?
Well, I'm finding it difficult to, it's hard for me to find something to read. Um, Bookstores are closed. The bookstore in town is.
It's because you've read all those books that are behind you already,
I've read
right?
in them, yes, they're very good. But what am I reading? I'm reading wonderful book by Carolyn Forche, a poet who is writing about being taken to Salvador, and by a Salvadoran man who shows her what the peasants are doing in their rebellion during the war. That's wonderful. One of my best friends in the theater and in life, who passed away recently from Alzheimer's, a book of his has been published posthumously. It's the last thing he wrote, and it is absolutely brilliant and wonderful. It's called Mislaid, and I'm about to read it for the second time. A brilliant novel. I'm reading a book about the rise of the religious right, which is truly giving me nightmares, called The Power Worshippers. I read about 5 or 6 books at the same time, always. It's just the way it works out for me. And I'll read, I don't like books to end. If they're good and really captivating, you know, I read 1 chapter a day, you know, sometimes not even that, because I don't want it to end. I want the story to continue. And then it ultimately has to end, and I go on to a different book. I'm waiting actually for a delivery of about 5 or 6 books that I've ordered from the bookstore in town.
Great. I'm reading Arthur Miller's biography, Time Bends, which I never even knew existed. I'm late to the game as usual. It's quite brilliant. It's one of the, it's not a page turner. You can pick it up and doesn't matter where you left off. He is such a big surprise. He's a brilliant writer, but he's also a historian. I mean, he's like, what's the study of, he's a sociologist. It's his observations of the times, and you can't help but compare the times with now, which it's hard not to compare the times with now, and no matter what you're doing. I'm also going through my family, my father's side of the family, German side, letters that the bulk of the letters are between 1933 and 1943, and it feels like now. It feels like where we are now. That doesn't make me happy. It's kind of, it's scary because they didn't know what was ahead of them. They had gone through World War I, and they were about to get into World War II, and my relatives here had, the rest of the family was still in Germany, and it's extraordinary. That feels like reading a novel in of itself, reading these letters. That's it. I'm a political junkie. I watch way too much Talking Heads, which is probably why I don't sleep at night. But
what is the thing or accomplishment or moment in your life that you're proudest of? Doesn't have to do with your career.
My kids, two son and a daughter who, I don't know, I never knew for sure that I certainly never thought I was going to be a performer. I love to sing, but the only thing I ever knew for sure that I wanted was a family, was to have children. I can't explain why I knew that that would happen, and why that, I can certainly explain why it made me the happiest, but I feel like it's the only thing that I can say that I did the best I could, and I'm not a big believer in regrets, but I loved trying to be the best parent possible. Yeah, and now I got 2 granddaughters to boot. That's the extra prize. Yeah.
What was the question?
Thank you, Mary Beth. I love that answer. The question is, what are you proudest of in your life, in your career? It could be a moment or truly anything.
Well, I love the theater. It's been my life, and performing and directing and writing. I mean, it's the greatest thing. Because of my father, I was very fortunate very early to know what I was destined to do. And that's an unusual situation for any young person to be in, but that was my situation. So I've followed through, and I've never deviated. The last job I had outside of my profession was in 1967. But when our son was born, my first wife and I were together for 20 years and never had children. We were young and selfish actors. There was no time for children. And when I got married again, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I said, well, not only, I told the guys at the bar where I practically lived between marriages, the Cedar Tavern. I said, I've met a woman, and I think I'm gonna marry her, and I think we're gonna have children. And they said, my friends, Maloney, you've already been married. Have another drink and forget about it, But when our son was born, we didn't know the sex. We decided not to know the sex. And we had 29 and a half hours of labor. Saw the sun rise and set a couple of times before the baby finally emerged. And it was a C-section after that. And I watched this operation on my wife, and I saw this. Now we knew it was a boy because his fist rose from within her like a fist, all bloody, and there's blood all over the floor. And then the doctor handed me this bundle and said, okay, go over to the warming table. You put them under a light so they warm up. And I said, after years in the theater, I said, I think I have finally done something, achieved something of true meaning.
Yeah.
And so we had another one. Then we had another one, a daughter. And they live in Burbank, California. They're beautiful, compassionate children. And I think that's the greatest contribution that I've ever made to the world. Not that I had that much to do with it, but it was truly meaningful. It's harder to pick something from the career because it's been a pretty great life, I have to say. And I'm sure I could pick that moment if I really, really wanted to think about it. But I've started to write memoirs now, and I've done a few, and I'm learning, finding out a lot about myself.
Yeah.
I think that is the perfect note to end on. So I'll turn it back to Claire and Neil to wrap up.
Yeah, and before Claire may tell me anything else I need to say at the end, but I just wanted to say a couple things. Number one, thank you both. It's such a pleasure to be talking to you. And I guess the other thing I wanted to say to everybody is, as you probably guessed, as you're hearing Mary Beth and Peter talk, their sort of curiosity and hunger. I've known them quite a long time, and I've just always marveled at the fact that you guys are constantly, reading, working on something, doing projects. Your pure hunger for process and for work, and your hunger in rehearsal to explore and grow it's been a marvel to me. And it's certainly as an example of sort of trying to figure out how to lead my own life in the theater. You both have had such broad and rich and remarkable careers. We didn't even talk about the fact that Peter's a master magician as well. Exactly. There's all kinds of things these guys do. And as Peter said, he directs and writes. So it's remarkable Thanks for taking the time to talk. And yeah, it's just great to see you both. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Claire, what else do we need to talk about?
We could spend hours, but no, I think that was a beautiful wrap up. Thank you, Peter and Mary Beth, for welcoming us into your homes and hearts. And I learned a lot about the both of you that I didn't know. So thank you for that little lesson. And to all of you who watched and asked questions and engaged with this programming, thank you so much. It means a lot to have you all in virtual support. And if you have the means and if you would like to see these virtual sessions keep going, we hope that you'll consider making a donation to Atlantic. Any size will do. We've put some information in the chat. And we hope to see you at a future Live with Atlantic event. Next week, we have the creators of The Secret Life of Bees doing a little watch party meets master class. So that's what's on the horizon.
Yeah, and I'll just say one other final thing, which again Peter had brought up, but and is so important in these times, and Claire's been talking about. We've all been talking about community, and these are two people who have been such a valuable part of our community at Atlantic, and I think community can help us through difficult times, and it's certainly, I feel like, the community of artists that I've spent a lot of time with, and the people at Atlantic, and everybody that has been worked at Atlantic, or just people that I've worked with or been friends with, that community is helping me get through this. So I thank all of you for being part of the community, and theater is so much about that community that hopefully we can all remember that as we try to, move forward into better times and better ourselves and all of that stuff. So thank you, all of you guys. And thanks for coming to everybody.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend, everyone. Be well, be safe. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.